Good morning. We're in Genesis 45. I just want to thank y'all for joining all the way. We've done 45 chapters in Genesis. From the first word of the Bible all the way to here, that's what we've done. That's quite an accomplishment. Okay, so we're doing good. Just want to throw that out there. We're on Preach Facts at YouTube. On YouTube. Okay, so guys, let's get right into it. 45. Then Joseph could not refrain himself before all of them that stood by him, and he cried. Uh-oh. All right, so, and he cried. Because every man that go out from thee, cause every man to go out from me, and there stood no man with him, while Joseph made himself known unto his brethren. And he wept aloud, and the Egyptians in the house of Pharaoh heard. Sheesh. Now, I just want to go over a couple points from yesterday, now that we busted into this, that I didn't mention, that I noticed in the footnote. I just want to bring up a couple points about 44. And there's still more. This is just some of the stuff I thought was important. One of the main points that I made yesterday was that he concealed his identity. And to me, like I said, a huge point, that's an image of the world and why God isn't so obvious. Because he conceals his identity, for the most part. I mean, other than, the Christ and all that, and, scripture and history and other stuff. For the most part, he's not just out in your face. And it says that here, he does that so that he doesn't reveal his identity. And to me, that's just an image of the world. And okay, big point. Okay, now, so and it says that he practices. They said that he practiced divination. It's another image of God. He can see the future and stuff like that. So multiple layers of God here, showing that that's an image of God. Okay, that's very important that he practices divination. Okay. And when it says they tore their clothes in 44:11-13, that's an image to me of the veil renting in two at the temple. Just saying. You don't really see stuff like that. They just tore their clothes when they tore their clothes. That's an image of the veil renting in two in the temple. After Jesus died, the veil rented in two, tore in two. So that's an image of, they tore their clothes in 44:11-13. That's what that is to me. Okay. Potentially. And when Judah says, "Hey, no, let me stay instead of the lad," that's a propitiation. That is a Christ picture also, because he's saying, "Hey, don't kill him, don't take him, take me." And that's what Christ does for us in his substitute. So, in a sense, one man dies instead of all the other die, instead of everybody else, potentially. So it's a propitiation. So that is another image. So it's just all through this. And they notice here that he was like Pharaoh himself. In 44:18, it says that Judah notices that he's like Pharaoh himself with his power and stuff. So that's important to know that Christ is like God himself. That's important to know. Okay. So multiple applicable stuff here that you can place on stuff in the world. And the Christ and God and God not being out in the open and all that. It says right here he disguised himself. I mean, what else do you want to know? That's perfect. That's a perfect example of why God isn't out in the open. It's a perfect example. So with that being said, we're going to push on. I just want to cover a few of those points on that. And he wept on 45, Genesis 45, verse 3, and Joseph said unto his brethren, I am Joseph. Doth my father yet live? And his brethren could not answer him, for they were troubled at his presence. Verse 4, and Joseph said unto his brethren, come near me, I pray you. And they came near, and he said, I am Joseph your brother, whom ye sold into Egypt. Now therefore be not grieved nor angry with yourselves, that ye sold me hither. For God did send me before you and to preserve life. And guys, to me, this is almost the image of, and I know I get a lot of images, just chill. This is an image of, okay, we do stuff, but we have no idea the impact that it's going to have. Like, okay, they had no idea. They could never foresee that this deed was going to come up on them in the way that it has, in a most critical way. And that's really what happened. They literally threw their brother into a pit. Little did they know that they were going to be in their brother's hands in the most worst degree. Like, if Pharaoh wanted to do something to them, I mean, if he wanted to do something to them, he could really do something to them. And that's an image of something that if they had known that, they definitely would have never done that. So I just want to throw that out there, that in the world we do stuff, but we really don't see the gravity of the situation that's coming. But it is that critical that you're really going to do something that you surely wouldn't do if you could see the outcome. But that's just, I just want to throw that out there. You know, that's important. That's a big point. So, and I'm going to bring that up about Joseph concealing himself. You know, because that's a big point to the atheists. That's a big point. If Joseph conceals himself, he didn't have to do that. He did that throughout a period of time, pulling strings, setting them up, doing all this stuff while concealing his identity, doing all this stuff. And when they had a feast together, that's an image of him coming in the flesh and everything, you know, stuff like that. So it's just, you know, it's just multiple layers of resurrection and all kind of stuff. So that was a big edifying chapter for me. And that one point about the concealing, that parallel that I drew, is that one parallel that I made. Well, not me. The Lord allowed me to see that. That is a big. That must be the most edifying principle I've just about ever seen, that I've seen on my own in Scripture. So, I mean, of course, you got New Testament. That's just jaw dropping, but that right there is probably the most edifying parallel I've ever seen in Scripture. So I just want to thank y'all for being there with me during that and continuing to stay, because that was huge. That was huge. So thank you, Lord. Moving on now. Verse 5, 45:5. Now therefore be not grieved nor angry with yourselves that ye sold me hither, for God did send me before you to preserve life. Guys, I mean, how much do you need to see? How much do you need to see? It's a perfect Christ picture. He's saying, don't be mad, guys, because this is all part of the plan. Pretty much. He's not really clearing them, but he's saying it all worked out. Don't be angry because of what y'all did. Not necessarily, but because of it, but just look at the bigger picture, you know. And it may just be because of that. And that's one of the mysteries. We know that we're involved, but we don't know how much of control we have. Are we really just puppets on a string? Even if it may be just that. So you have to be careful and have an eye for a bigger picture. So you never know how far-reaching the Lord is going to go, even through turmoil and stress and everything, to get where he wants stuff. To get stuff where he wants it. So be a little bit lighter on your load on yourself, guys, and know that even though a lot of bad stuff has happened, God may have been in charge. I'm just saying. I'm just throwing that out there. At some point, you got to let go of the reins and say, God, take this from me. And you know, and just realize that God really had the reins the whole time, possibly. You know, I'm just saying. Just throwing it out there, man. Just throwing it out there, because the devil's the big one to say it's all your fault. You know, we came into this world, man. I'm not making excuses, but, you know, there was already stuff in the world. So it's not like it's all our fault. There's already stuff in the world that was going to be tripped up on. So I'm not making excuses, but let's let the Lord take the reins at this point. Okay? Because Joseph is saying right here, therefore be not grieved nor angry with yourselves, that ye sold me hither, for God did send me before you to preserve life. And here he is. He's clearing them. Hey, God, don't be so hard on yourself, man. I came here and saved all these people. You know, he got good reason to be mad at them. They literally, out of just pure envy and hate, literally just out of nothing. They had no good reason to do that, but they did that. You know, he was just out there, you know, he had a little bit of stuff going on, you know, with his little dreams and stuff. He felt special. He felt, and I don't want to say he wasn't humble enough, but either way, they had no good reason to do that. But they did it, and here he is clearing them. You know, and to me, that's an image of what's going to happen. You know, we can be cleared too, if we're in the right position. So I'm watching a video last night, a YouTube thing. I mean, a TikTok live, and dude is basically saying that you can't sin anymore, and I'm glad to hear that, because that's big. People don't really say that, so I'm in the mind to say that that's where we need to be. We don't need to be sinning at all, y'all. We need to be chilling. So I was happy to see that, and it's rarely that you see that, but Scripture does say that. So I was happy to see that. So I just want to let you guys know, guys, drop everything. Drop everything, and that's me too. Drop everything. Okay? Christ came, he died, let's drop everything. Alright? Period. End of story. And leave it down. Leave it down. Don't think you're okay about doing stuff. You're not. You're not okay with your cognac and your nachos. Alright? End of story. Now, okay. For these 2 years, 45:6, hath the famine been in the land, and yet there are 5 years in the which there shall neither be earing nor harvest. Okay. Now, to me, this could be a potential image of, okay, Christ left, Christ left, he went away. But guess what? There's a famine in the land without the Christ, but guess what? Christ is here. I mean, there's still a lot of stuff going on. I'm just saying, like, this could be an image of that, because when Christ died and left, now we're using, now we're using the Spirit and the Word to get stuff out. So it's kind of like a famine because he's not with us, but at the same time, there's abundance. There's abundance in a lot of other stuff. So we're taking advantage of what we do have, and that's our good sense. Like he said, I mean, kind of like he's using his forbearance to know, okay, Christ is gone. Let's get things in order so that we're okay. And he did that. So I'm just throwing that out there. So we're kind of like in a famine without the Christ, in a way, But we're doing everything we can, harvesting and reaping while we can, because there's a famine without the Christ. Or, yeah, that's a good one. But I'm just saying. I'm not saying that's just something that comes to mind. Okay. In 7 it says, and God sent me before you to preserve you a posterity in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. Guys, point blank, period. Without the Christ, it was going to be ugly for humanity. It was going to be ugly. But that was never not going to happen. God always had that in place. So to get a little deep for a second, people say, well, what's God's stance on that with the Christ? How did he, as far as a world scale time view, what was his stance on that, as far as like, okay, was he just like, okay, I need to send the Christ now? Or was it like a predestined thing with the sin and everything? In other words, did he know that we were going to sin and stuff? And my answer to that is yes. This has always been a part of the plan for the man to fall. That's just my guess. I'm not saying that's what that is, but for God to be all-knowing, he had to know. that this is gonna happen. Okay, that doesn't make him odd or weird. It's just part of the process. Okay, so yeah, we fell, but we fell at football practice. You know, it's not like something that's bad. That's just part of learning. You know, you have to fall to do stuff. You know, even a baby, when they walk, they fall down. That's just part of the process. You have to fall down so that you know that you're not supposed to fall. Okay, am I preaching now? I'm just saying, like, sheesh. So yeah, we fell, but we fell at football practice. This is UGA, Alabama versus Georgia, man. We're not playing out here, bro. We don't mind falling down, bro. I mean, we mind it. We try to avoid it, but guess what? We'd rather lay you out first. And if we have to dive and lay out at the same time, we'll do it. Christ did it. Christ crashed out for us. You know, it doesn't matter, man. We just all about the home team. That's what we're doing here. We're way more pumped than UGA. We're way more pumped than Alabama. You know, I mean, sheesh. All right, now. So I say that to say that a lot of people say that, okay, well, if God knew we were going to sin, they don't like that picture. They say, well, that's not cool. We don't like that, you know. We don't like that, so we're just going to say, oh, that's not a good God. That's not really a cool picture for us. So we're not going to accept that. That may not be the case. God, I don't know God's standpoint on that, but if God is all-knowing, you know, that is a possibility that God did not know we were going to fall, or did not. That's a possibility, but that's not really the God that I know. So it could go either way on that. Either way, God is still God. Neither one negates God's identity or his presence. Either God knew we were going to sin, and he knew that we were going to go through all this stress and the Christ and everything, or it's the other way around, or God had his creation and it's just been unfolding. Either way, God's still in charge, and I still have to do my part. So it's important to note that neither one changes my role in things. I still have to do my part. Or neither one necessarily changes God's goodness either. So God can still be good in both aspects. Okay, so end of story. Okay. Now, let's push on for a minute. Haste. A great deliverance. Okay, so now, verse 8, it was not you that sent me hither. But God, and he hath made me a father to Pharaoh, and Lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. Now, that's a Christ picture, for sure. You know, he's saying, you know, he's basically saying, okay, I was supposed to come down here and get crucified. It's not nothing like that. You know, and that's funny. I mean, not funny, but it's funny how everybody has their own interpretation, but really God's been in control the whole time. Okay. So everybody's worried about the wrong thing. They're worried about the Trinity. They're worried about who's God, Jesus or God. They're worried about everything else but the fact that God's in full control and you just looking at all the wrong stuff. Period. All the energy you put into figuring out who's God and all this, when really you're just not in the right area with your energy. Think about all the energy and time you spent. Think about all the stuff you could have accomplished in that time that you was on these crazy lives and podcasts and saying all the stuff. You could have actually been doing something for somebody, or actually, who knows? You know. Here at Preach Facts, we're standing behind the Word of God 100% of the canon. King James Version, the canon right here. 66 books. That's what we stand behind. In the whole message. We don't believe in once saved, always saved. We don't believe in that. We hope that we're wrong. But I'm just telling you what we believe in. We believe you must be baptized also in Mark 16:16. You must be baptized. All right, now let's go. Oh, one more thing. They got this thing called the Deconstruction Zone. It's a channel on TikTok and YouTube, and it's basically an atheist thing. Not basically. It says right there, his title is God is Imaginary. And in a sense, he's not lying, because, God, where he's imagining all this, kind of like, and I hope you don't misunderstand me, but, it's supposed to be meant in a mocking way, but it's really promoting God, because, God, this is all just an imagination to God, probably. Like you have thoughts running through your mind, you might think about what you're going to do today, but that's just, so God is imaginary in a sense that he's using his imagination to do all this. So, I don't know if that landed well with y'all, but the whole time they're bringing up prophecy, they're bringing up scriptures. So really they're just preaching the word, and I like listening to it because it's edifying me in the stance that he takes on prophecies. It's such a one-sided, cold, ear shut way of looking at prophecies. It's ridiculous. And it's almost like he just took a position and just stuck with it, despite, it's crazy. And it's funny because they're really just preaching the word. I guarantee you that the people watching that channel are actually building up their faith, because the people that are coming up are solid. Dude's just laughing at Buddy. He's just like, you really are having that type of interpretation, and you're really making these deductions. The dude claims to be a former apologist. And for those of you who don't know what apologist is, that's somebody that gives a reason for their faith. They defend the Christ. They defend the Bible. So it's really quite comical about the stuff they're saying, because it's just not adding up. And throughout the process, they're bringing up scriptures. So they're basically having a Bible study in an attempt to go against God, or not necessarily go against him, but really just go against him, because the atheistic perspective is not a God friendly thing. The denial of God and his word, and always mocking him and stuff like that, that is not a funny thing. That is a pure blasphemy. So it's really edifying, because they're bringing up scriptures. I'm learning about scriptures. So what was set out to, it's funny because the channel was set out to actually bring atheists together in like a church setting almost. But they're really just doing a Bible study. That's the funny part. So anybody out there who's a fan of that show, guys, you're really doing the Lord's work and you don't know it. Because you haven't said one thing that actually adds up. End of story. So that's big, man. Yep. We're not alone in this faith, y'all. There's all kind of people, educated people. John Lennox, you know, he's a mathematician. He's a staunch Christian. All kinds of people. Thomas Aquinas. All kind of people throughout the ages have been staunch Christians. You know, it's just, it goes through the roof. All right, so and when it says here in verse 8 that he's made me a lord of all his house and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt, he's basically saying, yeah, that's an image of Christ, because, you know, he's everything's in subjection to him. And it's very clear in these points. It's almost like they took the Christ picture. If they were going to make a Christ, if they were going to design something about the Christ and God, this would definitely be a fabrication about that, because it's dead on about everything. But that's not the case. We know that this was written way before the Christ. But it's just a perfect Christ theology. It's a perfect Christ theology. So if you were going to go back and say, hey, let's make something up, and forgive me for even suggesting that, but if you were going to make something up about the Christ, to make it look like the Christ is what he is, this would be it. Because this is fully in support of the Christ. This is fully in support of the Christ, to the lengths and the detail and everything, and all the theology and reinforcing points. And it's just a perfect Christ picture. So don't misunderstand me when I say that I mean, we know it's not, but if you were going to do something to make something look like the Christ, this would be it. This is super dead on in everything. You know, the grand scale of things. You know, everything is a big world picture. And that's a perfect image of what we have here. So, haste ye, and go up to my father, and say unto him, thus saith thy son Joseph, God hath made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down unto me, tarry not. And that's awesome. Because, you know, the father had wept. And this is going to be just a joy to his heart. You know, because, yeah. And, yeah, that's big, man. I'm sure the brothers are probably thinking, well, no way. I mean, dang, now the father's going to know that we did that. We made up the story about the beast and all that. Yeah, he's going to. But guess what? He's just going to be happy to have his son back. He's not really going to be worried about all that. So it's also a point to know that their stuff's going to be thrown back in their face in many ways. Not only did I bust you guys and spared y'all, Now you're going to get your stuff thrown back on you in another way. So it's a multiple way they're getting torn up now. Not only are you getting raw punishment, but you're also seeing, now you're getting shamed by another direction. And that's an important point that I'm making. So yeah, you could have got your butt whooped altogether. Or killed altogether, sold into slavery, horrible things, everything you had torn from you, all your freedom. By you got caught, we caught you, but not only did you get spared, but guess what? Now everybody's got to know about what you did. So that's almost like a worse punishment. That all these years you told your dad that your son was died, and you went to put the blood on there and everything and all this stuff, but guess what? You really didn't. What does that make you look like? Not very good, I can tell you right now. Not very good, and that's what we're going to have to deal with if we don't get with Christ. Let alone not acknowledge God and all that. So that's an important point to make. That is a multiple faceted thing that we have to deal with. If we don't go to heaven and we go to hell, guess what? You can still see heaven over there. They said you can see it. I think that, like, okay, if you're in heaven and hell, you can literally see heaven and how good it is, but you over there suffering. So not only do you have to deal with the punishment itself, but you also have to deal with what you lost. That's pretty hard. You know what I'm saying? Don't show me all that. You know what I mean? But no, you literally have to look back in your life and deal with. It's a multifaceted punishment. They're probably thinking, bro, just go ahead and kill us, man. We don't want to go back and tell them that. But you reap what you sow, man. You do this stuff, you're gonna get it in ways you didn't imagine. Okay. So I'm just throwing that out there. They never thought they were gonna have to go back and tell him. But everything they didn't plan is happening to them. Luckily, the dude has mercy, and he just wants everybody to come back. So, and he says right here, God, in verse 9, God hath made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down unto me, tarry not. And to me, that's an image of we just need to stop, drop, and roll. Don't play with it. Don't have your last rendezvous. Just drop it and go. That's what we need to be. Don't play with this Christ thing, man. Let's go. Okay? Don't play with it. And it says right here, haste ye. Okay? And verse 10, 45:10, and thou shalt dwell in the land of Goshen, and thou shalt be near unto me, thou and thy flocks and thy herds and all that thou hast. And this is where it all starts, y'all, where the people get enslaved in Egypt. This is where they come to Egypt, basically. And then all that bad stuff happens. They get enslaved. Okay, so it's just. So that's just another part of the story. Yeah, it starts off good, but guess what? That's where that image ends, and we go into another chapter, another type of parallel about how we struggle with sin and stuff, and how God doesn't like that, and He basically drags them through he basically drags them through a lot of stuff. Where it didn't have to be that way. They could have just had like a 2-week journey. It could have had like a 2-week or 2-month journey. Ended up taking them like 40 years. So, even though they had a lot of signs and stuff throughout that time to let them know that God was for real, they still struggled. So, just because God makes himself apparent isn't necessarily going to help the world. So, God knows. God knows. You know, they had God, and let me stay on topic, but they had God with them, and they still struggled with their own problem, their own sin and stuff. They still struggled with obedience, even though God was very apparent to them. And that's another important point to make. All right, so and there will I nourish thee, for yet there are 5 years. And that, to me, hold on, that also looks, when he says, go y'all pull up, and I'm going to have y'all near to me, and y'all going to have your own village and stuff, that's almost an image of heaven, because, you know, we'll be with God there. You know, and he said he'll nourish them, and you'll have, so we'll basically be living with God under his wing, more literally, you know, at that point. So that's an important point to note right there, that that's also an image of you know, Christ is saying, okay, come on, let's go, pull up, I got you, I'm gonna take care of you, you'll be with me, let me take care of you at that point. And that's an image. Well, he does that for sure, but I mean, in a more literal sense, when we get there, we'll be with him. In a more prepared sense, you know, he's there's a place set up there for a more sanctuary type living. That's literally like your home. That's literally like where you're supposed to be at. Like you will literally. He's like Motel 6. He left the light on for you. You know, he's literally up there chilling. I mean, that's literally where you're supposed to end up. So, that's home. Okay. So let's go home, y'all. I'm staying on the right track. And okay. Verse 11, and there will I nourish thee, for yet there are 5 years of famine, lest thou, thy household, and all that thou hast come to poverty. He's basically saying, you know, and I'm not trying to read too much into everything, but it just stuff has on my mind. I'm going to share it with y'all that, you know, if we don't go, it's going to be ugly. To say the least. It's going to be ugly. There's really no other option. There's going to be any type of, it's either going to be go up there with him or, you know, it's not going to be good. So there's really no other option. And just having enough wisdom to know that there is no other option. There's multiple reasons for getting with the Christ. For one, there's no other option. You know, when God created stuff, there was no plan B. It's Christ or nothing. That's the way the creation works. So it's thank you, Lord. At the same time, it's, you know, we got to go. You know, there's really no other option. So, you know, it's kind of important to realize that, you know, with the Christ and everything, we're on a sinking ship, but he's provided a life raft. You know, he's provided a lifeboat, and, you know, you either get on that boat or you're going to sink. There's no other option. Or you can try to tread water out there in the ocean, you know, The water's so cold, you can't swim for long. You grab a board or something, hop on it. It's not gonna work for long, period. It's so cold. You'll be like Titanic out there. Frostbite and everything. So it's really the only way. It's just important to know that we're in a kind of a pinch on that. So not only is it's really the only option, but it's a good option. Okay. So it's important to note that. So it's not like we have options, y'all. And behold, your eyes see, and the eyes of your brother Benjamin, that is my mouth that speaketh unto you. That's kind of deep. And ye shall tell my father. We might have to check up here because that's kind of big. Wow, we're gonna have to check that out. Let's slide over here and check on that because that's it's almost like he's saying that's gonna be my eyes and mouth. Okay, 45. It says, and now your eyes see, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see, that is my mouth that speaks to you. I guess he's kind of suggesting that, hey, don't try to pull a fast one now, because I'm basically looking through Benjamin's eye. Let me check up here to see what it says before we pull off on that, because that's kind of big. I'm not really seeing anything on that, but wow. He's basically saying, hey, don't try to pull a fast one now. Just to avoid telling Dad, because, I don't know who he's sending back down there, but we're going to see. I think he's saying, yeah, don't try to pull a fast one now and just pull off. Because, that may be a temptation for them. Hey, let's just pull off and just not tell Dad, because Dad's gonna be like, what? You did what? So they might be trying to think to avoid this. And that's almost like, let me meditate on that for a minute, but and ye shall tell my father of all my glory in Egypt, and of all that ye have seen, and ye shall haste and bring down my father hither. And he fell upon his brother Benjamin's neck, and wept, and Benjamin wept upon his neck. more. So he's basically telling them, hey, I'm going to take care of y'all, man. Y'all are going to be straight from here on out. Like straight like y'all have never known. Like y'all need to pull up. Y'all go pull up so that I can take care of y'all and really take care of y'all. Like really take care of y'all. You know, they're not really in a position. They're in. Jacob's gonna put them in a. He's gonna basically give them land, housing. He's gonna really put them up. You know. So it's a lot of mixed emotions going on here with that. You know, what they're thinking. But hey, I gotta let y'all go, man. We're doing good though. There's a lot of mixed emotions about what's gonna happen, about telling the father. You know, it's almost like they slick getting envious again on the low. They're not saying it, but you can imagine their position. They're saying, "Wow, he's really throwing the weight around now." You know, wow. Now you want us to go tell the father and all this? Man, you ain't got to do all that. You know, but he's gonna do it. He's gonna do it. So that's a tough position. And it's an image to know that it's a multifaceted thing when we do stuff. It's not just about the punishment. It's about all kind of stuff. Going public with it. Now they got to go public with it. You know. So, guys, we did good. I think it wasn't our best day. It's just a lot of power pack stuff in these chapters. So we stopped at 45. So in 16 it says, and the fame thereof was heard in Pharaoh's house, saying, Joseph's brethren are come, and it pleased Pharaoh well, and his servants. And that's a God image. And it pleases God. So, and it says that he talked with his brethren. So now they're kicking it. Now they're chopping it up. They're making up stuff. They're making up. They've made peace about the whole thing. They're talking, and so that's good. They've made peace. They're talking. So that's where we left off. 45:16. So that's it, y'all. We're on YouTube at Preach Facts. Thank you for another day. We're doing good, I think. So we're on TikTok at Preach Facts 7. If you want to reach out, you can do the DM on TikTok at Preach Facts 7. It's all one word, or you can hit on the Gmail at preachfacts7@gmail.com. Thank you so much, guys, and have a good day.